Evening, everyone. Welcome to the Park Avenue Armory's public program. My name is Tavi Nyong'o, and it's my pleasure to have with us tonight for a conversation, to have you with us for the conversation with Anne Imhof and curator Ebony Haynes on the occasion of Doom, House of Hope, Anna's highly anticipated commission here at the Armory. A packed room suggests that this conversation is equally anticipated, so I will keep my introductions brief. At the public program, we aim to make space for dialogue that challenges, expands, and illuminates ideas shaping contemporary art and culture. And tonight's conversation is a perfect example. Anne Imhof's work is known for its uncompromising intensity, layering performance, installation, and sound into immersive environments that feel at once precise and volatile. Doom, House of Hope extends this practice in ways that have resonated deeply within the Armory's architecture and the emotional atmosphere of our moment. Joining Anna in conversation is Ebony Haynes, a curator whose vision and rigor have made her one of the most compelling voices in contemporary art. As director of 52 Walker, a David Zwirner space dedicated to conceptually and historically driven exhibitions, Ebony has cultivated a program that is both incisive and risk-taking, champion artists whose work interrogates power, structures, identity, and the art world itself. Her curatorial approach, which is deeply thoughtful and always attuned to the nuances of artistic practice, makes her an ideal interlocutor for this conversation. This evening's discussion promises to offer insight not just into the making of Doom, but into the broader questions Anna's work provokes, and happily both Anna and Ebony have agreed to take questions at the end of this conversation. These questions range from how bodies navigate the tension between intimacy and alienation to our own experience of spectacle and surrender. And so without further ado, please join me in welcoming Anne Imhof and Ebony Haynes to the Armory.
Thank you, Tavia. If anyone has not had somebody write a bio about you, I highly recommend it. That was very generous. Listening to someone talk about you. Thank you. I am thrilled to be here. More importantly, I was honored, truly, to be asked to be in conversation. I'm always surprised when artists are even interested. It's the truth. And as many people in this room and in New York, I was truly excited to see this performance. And I'm going to dive into things for everyone in the room. This is a selfish conversation for me to ask things I'm interested in, so save your questions for the end. So first, as Tavia mentioned... Yeah.
Can I
please.
Interrupt? I asked Ebony to have this conversation with me because she's for sure the best exhibition maker in New York, but I also don't see so many exhibitions that scale in the world. So I was really excited to meet
you're
you.
So sweet.
No, this is one of the best exhibition spaces.
Thank you so much. I actually love what I do, which I think a lot of people can't say, so I feel very lucky. And that actually is, you can see it? That's good. Sometimes you don't know what people take away. And that's the first kind of entry into my questions in what I've preambled as selfish. It's not really, but I am very interested in how exhibitions and projects are made, mostly because I take great care and have a lot of empathy for those processes. So I've seen this performance twice, and my first question is kind of how does something like this begin? As an invitation, as a pitch, or a combination of those things?
The Armory asked me to do a commission here. I think after PROD saw an exhibition actually without a performance in the Stehlig Museum that I had 2022, and there was a big musical aspect to it, and I think that interested him in terms of putting a room in a state where the audience is moving in a certain way and claiming this is an art show with a big sculpture in the middle. So then the Armory reached out and we had a meeting, and then there is something like first there are talks, and then there is the question, so what do you actually want to do? And then as I'm often like thinking with people while I'm talking, it's a mixture of being prepared for those conversations with things that mostly like come to my mind like this. Like it's like there's an initial thing, initial thought or an idea, and then there's like things that I develop while I'm in a meeting with people. And I think that's something that I often don't trust myself in. So like there is like a nervousness before that, because like you can never know. But somehow it always is the case that this works, that there's like kind of something that's in a conversation with somebody else that's a life moment that connects to the life moment that I'm actually planning to do.
It's serendipitous, or you hope you get there, that everything fits.
Yeah, or there's like a tension in between me and the institution, I think, and there's also then always like a back and forth. The Armory was amazing and like putting up this show, and I was not used to show in a venue. Like that's usually I show in museums. There's always like some white wall, even if it's like the Palais de Tokyo, where in Paris, where there are not so many white walls as in the MoMA or whatever, but it has a very different backdrop. And this was very different at this time. And what was the good thing about it, that the Armory has an amazing team and amazing capacities in terms of the way they deal with light and sound and like all of these things that I was excited to work with on that scale.
Yeah, on that scale, because you mentioned, if you're in a space that tries to foster a white room or a white cube, you're this moment of ideating. You mentioned, I often approach artists in the same way, where I'm not the Armory, but I'll say, I have an idea. Do you also have an idea? Could they go together? And then I often give this prompt of like, just put the biggest items on the list now, and we'll remove when we have to. So it felt for me like...
It's a tricky thing, right?
Yeah, it's tricky because then you feel like you're compromising after you've already put it out there.
No, or if you say to an artist, like, dream big, and they can't dream big, that's like...
They're not...
Afterwards, you're in the situation that you're like, oh...
That happens to me sometimes, and many. I'll be like, well, we can't actually change the lights. I know we said we wanted to redo the entire lighting system, but why don't we just look at these gels,
Do you also have the feeling that there's, like you were the first one to do that, to run that space, right? Mm-hmm. So there's like a certain history of exhibitions that you had there, and in museums there's a certain history of exhibition. Like for me, it's a very different thing to show in the Armory, even though I'm still, of course, connected to everything else, but here, the concerts that were here and excellence in dance that was here, like there's something about it that pushed me in a different place, for sure.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah, it was super exciting. Yeah,
you can feel it. I mean, it feels exciting. That's another question I had about this kind of pushing yourself, and immediately from a production standpoint and even curation, right? I mean, it seems like a gigantic space. This idea of hitting some kind of mark, whether successful is something you can measure or not, but like you said, like hopefully everything fits. And
yeah, I was scared shitless, I think, to show in New York City.
I mean, I have a saying to some of my artists, if you're not a little bit scared, it's probably going to be a bad show because you're too confident and not worried about the details.
Yeah, there's also something about like I don't know, the connection to doing something new and then doing something in New York City. That it's two factors that are incredibly terrifying.
New York's not that scary. Are we scary here? I'm not American.
It welcomed
so.
me very well.
Oh, that's good. Did you stay for a long time in the lead up to this? Did it start in Berlin, or was everything kind of here?
No, I actually worked on the piece since 1.5 years, so it had its stages, and I needed to come to New York to feel it, like a long time ago. So I think it was a year ago. I think we saw each other, Rosalie, right at this moment. I was like, hey, what's going on in New York City? I went to your space and to see shows and to feel what's here right now. And then I had the feeling that something is happening that is almost like kind of like something has to be stripped bare. That was the feeling, and like very pure in its like form, and people are not up for like a lot of noise and a lot of like a lot of pompous like let's say like not up for drama in a weird way, or that links them in performance to the 60s and 70s, and like the idea of like fluxes, and I had the feeling like people only need one sentence and they're fine. Like I could do the show with like one sentence and might be like if everything else fails, I myself have the power to die. That's like like Juliet's sentence, and it was like somehow in my mind like almost like, oh my God, I have to do this show only with paper and pencil and like people that writing sentences on it, because I felt like there was a moment that was needing more poetry than objects. Something like this, I felt. So, and then I was...
so that gets worked on in advance?
And then I was like basically really doing research in the performance arts library, public library for performance art. And so it's like I'm very interested in New York City's like history of dance, and I think for me this was a new thing to dive into that.
Does it feel like one of the, I'm going to kind of go around in circles, because one question I had was, I always kind of cringe, or not cringe, but flinch when I see any mention or writing of like the biggest to date, or like the largest yet, and or the most successful, the sold out. And it feels, for me, the questions come of like, I think the qualifier for what the largest and biggest is for so many differs. Like for you, it feels like it's the biggest, quite literally, in the space, right?
Yeah.
And then I think it's very spatially the biggest. Would that be fair to say? Right? And then, but some people will mention or say something about it's the biggest budget, or it's the biggest endurance, and then does the last performance or that kind of feedback or moment feed the next, or does it feel, is there any reflection on what comes after people see this biggest moment?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. It's like when artists like do their first big thing, you say like they're a shooting star, which means like they're up and then they're down, right? So from the biggest, it can go only like to something smaller, which is like, I think, also what I would love to do, to be honest. But there's something about the idea of something happening in a moment of time that is for me a big deal, and I think that was the feeling of this. I tried to cut in terms of the duration a lot of the duration that I think I would show in Europe. So I think I tried to make the piece 2.5 hours, and then because of the urgency and the material that was there and the size, I was then deciding to do it 3 hours long, which varies a little bit, but it works quite well. And I was worried about like New York audience, I anticipated it to be a bit of a throw off, and I didn't want this to be, because there's a very fine line in between frustration and desire that I know and that I'm like kind of tried to deal with to an extent that it is still like people are able to stay in there. The idea about this, like the show being the biggest yet, and the space that it's in, that was pretty intimidating to me in the beginning, and I was and also to use the space, and the space in terms of like the commission that the Armory gave me wisely, and put the resources in the right place or something. So I decided also to have a big cast and to have a big New York City based cast, and which meant this is all new people that I've never worked with before, which was like which leads to your former question right before, that I had to come a lot of times here to work with them. So I was here, I was already in, we started the piece in LA, like I work with people that I work with for a longer time, or people that I'm interested in working like individually before, and then we had this small group coming together in LA, and we almost mapped the space out. I had the idea with a cast in the very beginning, and then we tried to go from there to develop a choreography, and like I had somehow the feeling I need to talk about love, or there was this love story theme somehow occurring. But that said, like I came back in November, I worked with, I have the pleasure to work with the dancers of the ABT, because I met somebody, Connor Holloway, who is a former ABT dancer, who introduced me to these dancers, and I was like having to dive into their world a lot, and their schedule lined up perfectly, so we were able to work together. And then I came back and I went to Berlin, did the rest of the piece with the people over there, and then came back. Like I'm here since 1.5 months. So,
and that's a long time. I mean, that's a long production. Assuming that you also have other things going on, you're not just focused on this one thing for the 1.5 years. I'm assuming. Yeah,
I have a very good studio team that helps me with that, like running things in parallel. Important. And I also work maybe a little different than other artists with like management that is like also that took on now the live aspect of this. We are a very small group of people, but through that we are very fast and can move quite fast. And I have an amazing like press person that is also in the studio. So I tried to from the very beginning do that. So just to have like a little bit more agency, and not, because I knew there's this live aspect and there's the studio practice, and I had to somehow juggle this. And like, believe me, like an artist manager that is a woman and comes from the music business and is like kind of a boss in that field is not so easily accepted from the art world. And
I hear you. Because so when I walked in, one of the things I quickly took away about you're speaking about this management and this, immediately it felt for me that your presence and decision making, not just in the things I was seeing and experiencing, but in deciding who you were going to give agency to make decisions on things I was experiencing, was immediately felt. I've done an extensive research on the sound designer, Mark, now. I Googled him right away. What I personally appreciated, too, about this experience was what was set in your decision making was set. You know, lights. You know, early I had really nerdy questions like, it feels like that spotlight is increasing, but I can't tell if it is or if it's just my eyes adjusting.
I had an extremely good lighting designer.
It was so good.
Yeah, he's called Urs Schönbaum, and he's like amazing. He worked with the Armory a lot, so that was an advantage.
Really, really great. But then it also made it apparent the things that were less controllable. You know, like I could distinguish between like, oh, that's a great subwoofer, but then also not knowing where to focus my gaze or people or how I wanted to move. Like, should I, you know, like I said, I was fortunate to come twice, so I intentionally moved to the right the second time because I moved to the left the first time and noticed different things. So how much, you know, I also was going to leave early the first night and asked our connector here if they could send me a recording leaning into the museum version, which I'm like, somebody will be there with a camera and can send it. I have to go. And he just mentioned very loosely, it's different every time. Like, it's not going to be the same. So I was like, oh shit, I have to stay and I have to come back. But can you talk a bit more about that, you know, fluidity and how that feels every night? I mean, it's 6 days a week, the performance, right?
There were breaks in between, which was good because if it's not the case, like people get hurt or are too exhausted. The piece is basically is scripted but has very loose ends. So, and I'm in contact with the people that are performing during the piece. So it is 6 days, and over the course of these 6 performances, the piece changes because we're adding things or changing things. And I told Ebony, like in our brief conversation before that talk, like that there's like a lifespan to this. And I have the feeling like yesterday it was like at a moment where already you felt things were syncing up. So from the moment where you came the first time, this chaotic like first opening performance where everybody's not yet so sure of themselves, until now there's a dramaturgical like increase or something, like in terms of the timing, and that isn't so much my doing or my like contribution to it. It's more that people that are performing the piece sync up and they get more used to the audience and where the audience is and where they have to speak to, but also there are coming new ideas that we wave into the piece, and sometimes they're really dependent on them, so they decide about a timing in a specific way because they feel, oh, the audience tonight is like this or like that. And we have here, I have people here and I want to stay a little bit longer, or like I had my arch and my phrase that I made not yet, so I fill it out. And to an extent that we really like make up stuff in the piece. So I was telling Ebony there's this big jumbotron, and one of the dancers, Myth, is Tahlil, and he's like, he is performing a piece usually with a dancer on one of the stage cars, like there are stages on top of the cars for the ones who are not in the piece yet. And there's a phrase of answer and question and answer. And she is like posing a question in ballet language about her. Like she says basically she's beautiful and this is why she's gonna die. And like he usually asks her like why, and like she says like yeah, because out there are like big men hunting for me because I'm beautiful. So there's a very like valid like deep thing in there. Like Myth answers with like yeah, I'm but why, and like and he looks at himself like being strong, and it's a beautiful like gestural thing in between flexing and ballet, which is like flexing Myth like excellence, and flexing is like the storytelling. So he has gestures and she comes from ballet and has gestures from the classical ballet. So it is like constructed as a dialogue in between those two very different but very literal gestures.
Yeah.
I was also very interested in that somehow for this piece, much more than I am usually, like in some literalness in terms of the expression. And then I asked them in between, hey, Myth, could you go with Tess, who's filming, like a young photographer who's filming the piece, who you see projected on, you see her phone images basically projected on the Jumbotron, the videos she takes. And I asked them to go to the bunker to film some movement in the bunker to show on the Jumbotron, and asked me, hey, Myth, could you do the phrase that you do with Judea outside, could you do it in the bunker? And it was like via text, and also super fast. And then, of course, everybody was really confused. And it was like working but it was working kind of okay, because she saw him. He didn't know the timing, of course, because he never did it. And it was all like in the moment. But the next show, we got it damn right. And then he did move exactly in the same phrase, because they counted. So she could prep it, and count, and he counted in the bunker. So it was this, the bunkers are this like white, like little rooms at the side of the drill hall that we stuffed with like locker rooms and.
So is that an example of something in the life of this piece will return to tonight, for example?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
This is now a fixed thing, like, because it worked so well. Like, for example, there was one moment where I asked Xavier, who's also one of the flex dancers, and he's like one of the best dancers I've ever seen in my life, and he's like. I asked him to do an improvisation in a moment where I saw in the evening beforehand that the middle space after the first solo of one of the soloists, or one of the dancers, like he leaves and the whole space stays the same. So people really respect that center stage in a way, which I didn't anticipate beforehand. And so I asked him, I said, like, hey, can you take tone space and perform underneath the Jumbotron if everybody is gone, because there's the space and you can just take it, and there's your space that we were looking for, because we were looking for a space where he could do his solo part, because he has a part with somebody else together, and then he was doing it, but then I didn't think about that the light was going off, because of course the light designer had made the cue so that only
it's pointed somewhere else.
Yeah, it pointed somewhere else, and for tone, his solo was off. So the light went off, and I was like, shit. I asked Xavier to stand there, and now he's like performing this amazing solo. Everybody stared at him because he's really, really good. And in a moment, I was like, oh, this is so beautiful. He's like performing, and it's like blurry, and like, I hope he's doing it longer, because, but he has the feeling for it, because like in flexing, improvisation is such a big part that it's like, it's very courageous of them to do it in this moment, but it works very well, because it's part of their practice. But then I was like, but maybe it's not okay. And then I asked Eliza, who I saw didn't do anything in this moment on the stage, to come. I was texting her, and I was like, "Hey, Xavier, could you light him up with your phone?" And then she was coming down to me, and she was like, "That's not enough." And I gave her my phone, which makes me basically not a director anymore.
So you gave up your direction for Spotlight.
Yeah, and it was beautiful, because she lit him up, and then to end this, and I was like, how do they get out of this? And I was like, and he was just doing this, and she went away, and it was so beautiful. You know, these moments, they would never be so perfect if I would cut their excellence that they bring in, thinking my control on them would be the thing that makes it perfect or something.
And I think you were alluding to something there that I was really interested in both times here as well, and like the fact that the audience, almost like muscle memory, we should question the fact that we don't question enough being in the space, like this idea that the circle is held, right? Nobody's been told they can't break. There's no actual boundary. They've just kept this barrier, or they don't want to intrude, but the direction is so beautiful. How, like, I remember the scene where Josh and someone else is doing this, like,
Waltzing.
yes, the waltz, and then you can see it getting bigger, and people just respond. And so this collaboration between the performers and the audience felt intentional. I don't think you can predict what the audience is going to do. But maybe a very existential question is, were you predicting that the audience would do instinctually what they should do? So no need to map it out.
Yes and no. Mm-hmm. I would say.
Like, I mean, some people were going into the Cadillacs on opening night, which is outrageous.
Yeah, I love that. I love the derail. The derail is not loved by the institution so much, but I think the people who perform in the works, they know very well how to deal with situations that are like crossing boundaries, like that, or like crossing boundaries of like too close with a phone or something like that. So that's kind of implemented, and that's what I do since like a couple of these staging these pieces is making stages that are on one level with the audience, so making pits more and moving those, and that's how these pieces are done. But now I had a ballet in terms of like the third act being this like ballet with like ballerinas and point shoes and like a more classical approach that. And then suddenly I had the feeling the stage is necessary, because there is a weird moment in between showing this, showing a hierarchy in terms of like stage and non-stage. And sometimes it's good to have that. You know, when Xavier and Jeremy go on stage with Serenade, it's important that they're on stage and not on the floor. You know, like there's like something that makes stages very important in a way and very necessary to like lift somebody up.
Yeah, and then but you also there are multiple, if each point of scene were a stage, there are often multiple stages happening at the same time. So I felt like initially there's this anxiety of like what am I supposed to catch, or where is my eye supposed to go, because from any like how you choose your own adventure,
there's real direction.
And do you think about, is it possible for, I mean, you can't really predict it, but I assume it was made to understand that somebody might not catch one stage but see the other.
Yeah, for sure. I was anxious about sight lines because the space is so flat and the cars in themselves do not give it all. So like we're working with like people being on shoulders, people like standing on certain things like a skate rail or even on a skateboard. It's like kind of something different. But the non-directionality of the, like that people very literally like choose their own positions, but also like in the space choose their own positions, that creates something like there's no escape, like not for the audience, not for the performers, which makes the being together in the space like very palpable, but also very precious in a way. Or for me, it's very precious. This is also why my idea of work, in this sense, is like very much so that it's a celebration that it has a beginning and an end. And with the countdown, for example, backwards, I wanted everybody to know this has a beginning and an end, and like to everybody, because I don't know New York audiences, and I thought the more I tell them like what's going on, and they don't, like, the better we understand each other. But there's also something about, of course, seeing an image from 360 degrees most of the time that I love. Like, I love doing images like this because it's just more interesting and it's just more like it just asks more from the viewer, but it also, I don't underestimate my audience. They're like everything, you know, like their eyes are everything, and that's like why these pieces are there at all. And there happened something funny with me and working with ballet, that there's a certain different kind of discipline in it that I was like, I was thinking about earlier, and I was thinking, okay, what are we talking about, and maybe the different styles of dances and where my interest comes from or whatever. Like I was like just thinking that, okay, the dance on stage, like, or for me, I was like, the ballet needs a backdrop. Like that's what was my first, like, oh my God, I work with ballet, they need a backdrop, otherwise it gets lost. And what I wanted to do is like bring them so close to the audience, or I thought like I need principles to work with something that I've never worked before in that extent. Like I work with ballet dancers, but not asking them to do, or working in their form, with their form only. So I was thinking about that this is like kind of a moment where I needed somehow the backdrop, I needed the stage, I needed like some certain principles to deal with, and that was like I wanted them to be very close to the audience so that you see exhaustion, like especially because I was interested in the idea of the ballerina, like female figure of a ballet dancer, or like there's also something in ballet that we came across. It's a totally different thing about how is gender addressed in ballet, and like all of these things that are much more basic and practical, that has to do, I think, with off stage and on stage, and that relation that it has, that it's not about the excellence only, it's about like the whole thing, like, and how you deal with the thing as a whole.
I loved this moment of this ballet principal, like it's looking at Juliet in the circle.
Yeah,
and
it's
then
the Juliet in the ballet, basically.
Juliet in the ballet.
Yeah.
They're looking at each other in this super intense moment, and then she kind of backs out of the circle.
Yeah.
And this like dichotomy of this, imposed upon us, really, this idea of register and different disciplines. It's really felt there, but it also works so harmoniously. Like you can see them vibing on each other, really, for lack of a better description.
Yeah, I don't know. It was like really important to me that this happens in the center stage, the solo that we did together. Like, I mean, Devon Tusher, the principal, she was really like influential in terms of like the creation of the ballet, like movements, and like especially her solo, which was, I think, not her comfort zone to come up with like a whole set of like movements, but I wanted to work with her, like with the other people too that I work with, and not make a difference there in my approach. But for me, it was really important to show exhaustion, like very close to the audience, and not let especially the female figure in ballet, not let her be like effortless only, and like graceful, and like so far away that you don't even see her sweat. You know what I mean? Like footies that she does on stage is so hard that even not ballerinas can not do this, and then it's so exhausting. And I wanted this to be very close to audience in a way. This like idea.
It felt very close to
on
the
breaks, you know, like breaks and freezes and interrupting, going in and out of an extrovert and an introvert character.
Yeah, and it felt, just thinking about duration and endurance, and kind of, I was really, full disclosure, I didn't know it was 3 hours when I first came. I missed that memo. I don't think it was in the invitation on my ticket.
No, I don't.
I think it's like, oh yeah, come to 7:00 performance. And I'm like, 3 hours. But to that point, when I walked in, I was like, oh, like Anna's just fucking with us. It's just part of the set design. It's gonna get to like a countdown of 1:28 left, and the light, and it's gonna be like over, and we're, this is gonna keep counting or something. But I was quickly corrected. And then I thought, how intentional. I mean, it's nice to hear you speak to it, and that you were really conscious of trying to give the audience, manage their expectations. Like this is the deal. Because when I first encountered it, I was like, oh man, this is like the longest road trip when the GPS countdown is not moving, because at one point I really had to use the restroom, and I looked up and I'm like, it's only been 2 minutes. But then sometimes I'll look up and I'm like, oh my gosh, like at the end especially, I was like, oh my gosh, there's only 25 minutes left. I can't believe I didn't look over there, or I missed this whole thing. So there was definitely different moments of time awareness, and I think it probably varies amongst the individuals. Like sometimes I was thankful when the clock went away, and then sometimes was that how conscious was that decision? Intentional.
You mean that the clock is there and that it counts down?
Yeah, like that you thought, I mean, like sometimes it goes away, and did you want people to kind of, was there a connection to the doom? Like we're waiting for this thing to hit end.
Yeah, it was different.
Or is it important to see the time, I guess? Like
it was different things. It was like somehow I felt there was something about work and clocking in, like, and waiting until it's over. Like there was something about that I was interested in. That's maybe a bit further away. And then it was really to count down from the end to the beginning, because everything's like turned around. The story's turned around from the end to the beginning. It starts with basically the ballet starts with a bow. The whole thing starts with a funeral march. So
yeah, the story's not linear, but the time is counting down in a super linear way.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought the clock was always visible, but then I figured after the first dress rehearsal, I figured, oh my God, we have to have more content on the Jumbotron for it to work. I only wanted to make it in the intermission. There was an intermission. It was really like an experience that I had that I suddenly found it interesting to have that other layer where I could implement images that was the Jumbotron. And I was like freaking out about it. And then I worked with this amazing young photographer, Tess Petrino, together, and she films it. And I was like, oh, we could actually have more images like this, because they make cross references, which I really liked. I really liked the cross reference of one of the flexors, performing in the bunkers, while Perla, the young actress in the main room, is like kind of reading like an obituary of the critic that I turned into the first form, which is like telling a completely different history of dance, she's very self-assured about this, and that she contributed a lot to putting this on the cultural map, and then see, okay, which cultural map it is. Like, I think these like references that are still left very open, that I feel more, I think, than I intentionally put them. And I think I feel it because the audience is coming in, and this is why these pieces have a lifespan, and it's over the duration almost of like 10 days is okay, or 7 days is better, because after the 6th day it's there and then it dies. It's not a theater play. It's not a thing that you can do over and over, I think. It's not that idea. It's
you can't hand the script off to this MFA program and tell them to redo it. That's kind of awesome,
maybe then they have also fun with it from the first moment to the last. I don't know.
I see this becoming an MFA project in the future, in the canon.
I thought also, I don't know, like if you can refer to that, but that there's a certain idea of discipline, and I only now think about it that you asked me because of the clock and how it turns backwards. It's not so much of pointing towards a doom's end or whatever. Like I also think that was almost like suggesting, the mise en scène was suggesting there's something outside, and the inside and the outside somehow collided, or like came together in that weird way, because I wanted to have the drill hall stripped bare, but then use it as a gym, basically, that had like, and everything that's in there is rented. So I didn't want to build things that are then trashed, and like that was like maybe the paper idea that I had after meeting Rosalie, that I thought like, okay, this has to be really ephemeral. And then there are so heavy things like these Cadillacs inside the room. But still they are almost there, and then they go away again because they would have been produced anyways. So
I just got a 5-minute sign, so I'm going to ask a few questions that are not as deep. Apologies in advance. One, I think they're deep personally.
But there's one thing,
Yeah.
I think, to what you asked before. Sorry,
That's okay.
to stop you here.
No, just say it.
There's something about like the missing out that you said, that the people are editing their own, like with their own trajectories, their own piece. That there is something about a negative space of something that you didn't live, or something that hasn't been there because of certain circumstances. And I think there's an interest of mine that I thought about that is like in inside the ballet as this like form of discipline that's very much of a long trajectory history that is like kind of comes almost from the inside in a weird way, because it comes from the court and power and like military and like showing the female body in a certain way, and then there's like, I think the other forms of dance that are present inside the other part of the piece that are like where there's almost like the negative of this, that's a discipline that comes from the outside that is like implemented in a different way, more so because there's like kind of an outside that hits with a stronger discipline towards movement, and more also in the very literal sense of movement, that is like, treating, like, it's like a state that is treating its citizens in a different like way, and that has this disciplinary like aspect to it. And I think there is a thing about discipline and presence and absence that was very exciting to me to explore. I think now I work very intuitively, so that was not like, I didn't research that, you know what I mean? But it's like a
Maybe
I think there's
something
an interest in the images.
And would that come, do you think that's an example of what you, like, understanding discipline in this way now? Would you lean on this for the next, or I assume it must be considered for, you know?
I definitely know now that that everybody like flexors and ballet dancers need PT like very much because their bodies are so like exhausted after a show like this, and there's a lot of stretching involved and a lot of physical exhaustion there that one has to really deal with in exactly the same way. And the body needs care, and it needs like kind of ways to rejuvenate or like
to reset, rejuvenate
themselves. And I learned a lot about like working with new people. I think that's on new fields of dance, and I was very humbled because I was really going for excellence in the choice of my cast, and I was really humbled to work with these people. And I think I only made a piece like this because I got their idea about these things, and they gave it so generously to me, you know, like I have their experience with discipline and their ideas and like, experience in the self-chosen, but also in the non-self-chosen way. So it's like kind of interesting to me.
But that's what feels exciting, though. It's like when I kind of alluded earlier to the fact that it is felt, and I think it's really special, you know, like I'd imagine working with an artist like you, not every artist can relinquish, you don't relinquish control totally, but to but I mean, to be in this kind of, it feels like you're welcoming something that is generative, meaning, yes, you didn't think about discipline in that way, and you're thankful for the lesson, and instead of fighting it, it's like working it in, you know, and that probably gives to the improvisation that comes most nights, and almost like we are in your artist practice if you were to come to every performance. it would be like, okay,
Pretty much.
yeah, welcome to the studio, or in a really exciting way. You're
There's
having,
something about this for sure, or there's something about offstage that is for this kind of work, and for, I would even say that I think it is important in like production period that an offstage and seeing a thing as a whole is almost more important, or weighs the same as the on-stage moment. There is something about the life, of course, that is like the moment where everything comes together and where decisions are made that are images, and they're representative images to the work. And once they're out there, once you all saw it, like, it's not mine anymore, right? Like, people can critique it, people can trash it, people can put it up, like, whatever. Like, but there's something about off stage that gives it the base that it needs. It's not the strength of the images as how you do things and how you work together, and like why you do things together, and like that makes it somehow, that makes the piece what it is. And I think it's like, I learned that from the people I work with, for sure.
And this endurance performance
I had to learn
must
a lot.
you learned it a lot.
Yeah, I'm generally asking a lot, and I'm pretty ruthless, so it's like...
I don't believe that. But the endurance performance lives on because the discussion around nodes in the performance are just going, it's so interesting how people take such different things away, and I think we'll continue to, and how they talk about it. I'm wrapping, yes, I promise.
You wanted to ask those cool questions.
It's okay.
That are
I'll just ask one. I'll just ask one before everyone else can ask a question. But which one am I going to pick? What are you listening to right now? What's like? Are you like super obsessed with a song or album, particularly while you're here, or is there like a thing you keep playing?
Yeah, French pop.
French pop.
Yeah, and then this, like, I work with Jacob Madden, and like, because also working with people from the ballet, there's something in this piece that I think that we chose the slowed down Bach for this Doom soundtrack that's like really lingering, and it becomes, because it's slowed down 8 times. And it's one of Bach's passions, like, so it's slowed down 8 times, and it becomes so eerie that one, like, when I heard it the first time, when Wille Heimalas sent it to me, like, that's the head of music, I was like, fucking shit. I heard it in my car in Los Angeles, and I was like, this is so eerie, I had to switch it off. With the dystopian thing outside, I was like, no, this is not working. But then it was working, actually, and I listen to a lot of Bach right now, and like Vivaldi, this pianist that I work with, this young pianist, he brought a lot of amazing things that then were correlating with the stuff that I wrote, or like they had the same like chord progression. So we really like landed in something, and then it's so fun to listen to these like fulminant pieces like Vivaldi or whatever as a group, and like nerd out
last
to
question,
it.
I promise. Will there be an album? Selfish question.
Yeah, actually we really want to do one, but there has to be like a studio and money for
production
recording.
rights. Yeah, recording, mixing. Okay, I'm wrapping. I have lots of. We can talk more another time for my own other questions, but we happy to open it up.
I think actually, sorry, just we might actually be at time.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No worries, no worries. It was a riveting conversation, right? So no one wanted to prematurely end it, but in order to make the performance at 7, we're going to have to.
It's only 6:30.
1, 2 questions.
Okay, 1 or 2 questions.
1 or 2 questions.
I can come late. I'm the last one to show up on stage. You know?
Sure.
You worked with an external curator, Klaus Biesenbach. And I was wondering why an external curator, and what's the role of a curator in a piece that's not happening, not taking place in a museum, but in a venue like this? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. That it's, I think, unconventional to have curation or like aim for that in a situation like this, but I think I worked with curators in the past, like especially like my experience like in the Tate Modern, like working with somebody who is like an excellent scholar of performance, like Catherine Wood. That was an experience where I gained a lot of knowledge from, and then that was in a like museum context, so it had a bit of a different like a different net to hold us in there. And I think like with the Armory and how Klaus Biesenbach works, like with the Armory, it's like a long relationship, and that was like that was very interesting to me to see like how he works with an institution like this, and like how he can like basically add to a piece that's basically non-museal, like let's say that, like in a very constructive way. And I think he has a lot of experience with that, because he worked with like artists like Marina Abramovic and Björk.
Oh, I saw here at a performance.
Yeah,
that was cool. Marina was here.
Yeah, I know. She was like, she was very kind and generous, and like tapping my shoulder sometimes. When I got a bad critique, I got a text suddenly from a number that I didn't know, and I was like, "Hey, don't worry, you're a great artist. Like, I have 500 of those." And I was like, "Okay."
Oh, nice.
No, it's really nice when you get support from artists that had to make their way as women where they are now, and that also got a lot of shit for it. And I think that it means a lot to me when somebody like this, like somebody like her, who is way older and has a career like this, like reaches out to me. And it should be more like this, that women artists talk to each other about their experiences, because it helps a lot.
And be very candid, if you can. Sorry, go ahead, Tavia.
Just one more question from the audience. The first person I get to.
I'm seeing the piece for the first time tonight, but since the piece is titled Doom, and you've talked a little bit about the discipline and the sort of dysphoric aspects, I'm just curious if also euphoria and sort of a liberatory element plays into the work, and I'm thinking of the aesthetics of, the nightlife, rave, things like that.
Yeah, like for sure there's like an aspect of that in it, that we thought of it a lot like as a ball or something like this, like almost like kind of an elegy or a ball or something that's like a celebration of sorts. And I think sometimes, or my work is often like connotated, like especially here with Berghain, because I come from Berlin. I've been there once. There's like principal ballet dancer Daniel Simkin, he took me like once, and once I went on New Year's, which is like actually only the tourists do it. But there is for sure something like in nightlife and in rave culture that is like a transgressive idea of like claiming a time of the day that's not yours, that your eyes are not made for, that's like a space where you can be who you are, and can be different and can change like for a night and come back. So there is this idea about the club that I think internalized a lot, because I worked in a club as a bouncer. It's not so much that I changed every night. I mostly had to stay awake every night, and I did it for money because I was a young mom and had to earn my money somewhere to go to art school. So I think that's one of the kinds where I was almost like thrown into and lived that, but I had almost the beat almost behind me, like I wasn't so much like a club kid or something like this. And I think there is something about this, like claiming the night that I love, and about the darkness that cradles you, like with its softness, and that makes your body lines blur, and that makes you part of a bigger thing. Thank you.
And on behalf of those who are going to see the show shortly, and everyone who's been here for this really wonderful conversation, thank you, Anna. Thank you, Ebony. Thank you all for being here.
You're all welcome. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.